Hey guys, I am Just an Opinion. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel, whichever the case might be. Are you a brand new gun owner? Have you just recently bought your very first gun, and if so, is it a revolver? Well, if you are, and if it is, then this is a quick tutorial on how your revolver works. Just the basics. I will talk about safety a little bit as we go, but this is not going to go in depth into the rules of safety. I have a separate video for that, which I will put a link to. Go check that video out. That's important. So you may have bought a revolver that looks similar to one of these. These are very small revolvers designed to be concealed on the person. Or you may have bought one that's a little larger, such as this. But in any event, they all work basically the same way, with some slight differences. And here you see two that look a little bit different, and I'll talk about why. So let's start with this one, because this is probably the most familiar looking and the most traditionally functioning. This is a Smith & Wesson 38 Special, small snub nose handgun, and you can see that it is very small. It is also very light. It shoots 38 Special, which is a round that looks something like this, only this is a dummy round. You can see by the bright orange polymer bullet there, and the fact that it has no primer, in it. This is a designated safe dummy round, and this is what I'll be using to demonstrate. Okay, so if you brought this thing home and maybe the gun store was super busy and they really didn't have time to spend with you and go over an orientation of the gun, and maybe the manual, which you need to read, please do read your owner's manual all the way through. Maybe there are parts of that that are a little bit confusing and you're not sure how some of this stuff works. Or maybe you bought the gun secondhand, or maybe it was loaned to you. Whatever the case might be, if you're still in need of some information, hopefully this will help. But I'm going to try and keep it short so I don't bore you and you don't wander off. Okay, so here's your new revolver. Here's the handle, the grip, the butt. It goes by different names. Obviously, that's where you hold it. The next obvious thing is the trigger. Trigger is right down here on this revolver, and it is surrounded by what we call the trigger guard. Trigger guard is important, and I'm not going to make this a safety video, but keep your finger out of the trigger guard. Again, go look at the safety rules video for more information about that. Next we have the barrel. The barrel is another pretty obvious part. Everybody knows what that is, and that is the business end of the revolver. So that's the part we don't want to point at anything. Moving back from the barrel, we have this big round thing with lots of holes in it. Well, that is the cylinder. The cylinder contains a number of chambers, each of which would be loaded with one round of ammunition. I'll show you that in a sec. When we move back even further, we have the hammer. Actually, what we're seeing is the spur of the hammer. That's called the hammer spur. Okay, if I pull that back, this would be cocking the gun. You've heard that terminology. And if I pull that back, now you see the exposed hammer right there. Inside is a firing pin. And when that hammer comes forward very fast, it hits that firing pin, sends it forward, and it makes contact with a primer that we don't have here, but a primer that would be in this round of ammunition, and that's what ignites it. All right. Now in this case, again, this is a Smith & Wesson, so Smith & Wessons and a number of other brands use this type of release mechanism for the cylinder. You simply slide this forward. I'm going to show you this way so you can see a little better. I'm taking my thumb and I'm just going to push it forward toward the cylinder. Okay? Do that, and at the same time, from the other side, I just want to push it with my fingers upward or toward me if I'm holding the gun this way. And it swings out, and it swings out only this far. Okay? Okay, so this is our cylinder, and these are the chambers that we talked about. This one happens to have 5. Most revolvers have 6. They've always been called 6-shooters, right? Well, some of these really small ones only have 5. So here are the 5 chambers in our cylinder. And you can see the back end of the barrel. This hole is where the firing pin is going to come through at a high velocity, and it's going to contact our round of ammunition, or cartridge as it's called, that's located inside the cylinder. And of course we're going to have 5 of those in there. So let me show you that. I'm going to load 5 of these dummy rounds, and that's how you load them. You just simply pointy end first, drop it down in, make sure they're all the way in, nothing sticking out, and then to close the cylinder and load the gun, you want to push right here. Let me show you. Right in front of the cylinder, there's a part that's called, some folks call it a yoke, some call it a crane. Depends on the brand of the gun, really. But you just want to take that and push that up all the way till you hear it click, and then take these fingers that need something to do and just put a little pressure. And this one, in this case, it didn't move, but you want to rotate that cylinder until it clicks into place and doesn't move. Okay, now the gun is loaded and it is ready to be used. If you have a revolver with an exposed hammer such as this, you can cock the hammer back, and you see what happens to the trigger when you do that. Let me show you that again. Here's our normal trigger position way out here. If I cock this hammer back, that moves the trigger way back there. What that does is that moves it from double action to single action. All right, well, what does that mean? I'm throwing more terminology at you. Let me explain what double action and single action mean. Double action means with each pull of the trigger, 2 functions are happening. So, again, I am loaded with safety demonstrator ammo, no live ammo. When I pull the trigger, the first action is it's going to cock the hammer. It's also going to rotate. See the cylinder rotating it? It's rotating the cylinder. And then it's going to drop the hammer when I get all the way back. If I cock the hammer manually, it's taken away that first action, and now it's in single action mode because now only one action has to happen, and that is the dropping of the hammer. I strongly advise you, especially if you're a new gun owner and your new gun is a revolver and it has an exposed hammer, please do not do that. Do not get into the habit of cocking the hammer into single action. Main reason is because when you do that, the trigger requires very, very little pressure and very little distance before it fires. Just a touch, just a slight touch. You've heard the term hair trigger. That's almost what that becomes. So you want to get used to the idea that you're going to use double action, which would be this, pulling that trigger all the way back. And that's the other thing. And when you do pull the trigger on a revolver, you want it to be a full, uninterrupted stroke, all the way back, just like that. You don't want to try and stop halfway or make it in two different pulls or 3 different pulls, because what's going to happen is you can interrupt the mechanical timing that's going on, and you can actually cause the gun to sort of temporarily malfunction and become out of time and out of sync, and the trigger will get stuck and you won't be able to shoot it. So when you're shooting your revolver, a smooth, full trigger pull all the way back, and then when you let the trigger out, let it out all the way back until your finger is off of it. Just like that. Okay? Now when you fired 5 shots or 6 shots or however many it holds, or however many you wanted to fire and now you're done, you want to unload the gun. Same process as when we loaded it. We want to slide forward the cylinder catch so it releases it. From the back side, we're going to tap the cylinder out toward us, and then we're going to tip the gun up Sometimes they'll fall right out like that. If they don't, we're going to push on this rod. When we push on this rod, that pushes out an ejector. That ejector will push those spent cartridges or spent cases out of the revolver. And sometimes they need a little wiggling or shaking or whatever, and they'll come out. And then you're ready to load more rounds into it. Okay, so those are the basics on how your revolver works. They are all essentially the same. They all work basically the same way. Now, the reason I have two of them here, and I wanted to show you the difference between them, and this poor guy's been being ignored, is you notice the one thing different about this one, besides the color, is that we have no exposed hammer spur. In fact, it's completely sealed. You can't even get to it. That's called an internal hammer. What that means is this is a double action only revolver. You can't cock the hammer. There's no hammer to reach with your thumb and pull back and make the gun single action. So if this is what you purchased, and this one happens to be a Ruger, if this is what you purchased, something like that, then you don't have to worry about my whole speech about not cocking the hammer and using single action mode, because that choice is not available to you. And this one works a little bit differently, so in case you're trying to slide that forward after watching me do it and go, well, that doesn't work for me, that's because you have a different brand of gun. This Ruger, you just push it in straight like a button. So we just push this release in just like it's a button, and then same way to release the cylinder, we just push it out and let it fall down to its horizontal position. This is also a 5-shot, so it would be the same thing. We would load our 5 rounds of ammunition. This is also a 38 special. Close it, use the yoke or the crane to close it. Also, get in the habit of never putting your fingers in front of the muzzle. So make sure your fingers are always behind the muzzle of the gun. And there I've turned it until it latched, and now it is ready to fire. And again, this is a internal only hammer, so we can't do anything with it. The only way to fire this gun, double action only. And you can see that with each pull of the trigger, it rotates the cylinder. Why does it do that? Well, because right now, if I had just fired that round, the one that is up there in line with the barrel and in line with the firing pin is a spent empty case. So the next live round is back here. So when I pull the trigger the next time, see, it's bringing that new live round up into place, and then when I finish pulling the trigger, it drops the hammer, hits the firing pin, and fires that round. That's how they work. That's the basics. There's a lot more good information around. Please do the research that you need. Good luck, be safe, and be healthy. Thanks for watching.